What a great day to check out Pharloom's beautiful seas and... Oh. Is this all we have? We have Shellwood's water, we have the most beautiful water in the world in Biowater, and the actual good sea in the past? That's it? That's all we got here in Pharloom? Well, at least we got some unique mechanics for the water we have. If you use things like the flint slate that gives you fire, you can actually put it out in the water, and our seas conduct electricity if you use the Volt vessels on them. And there are more unique mechanics in the game now. These shell shards, given enough time, they will actually sink into the water. I guess bug shells are too dense to float, but that's not just a quality applied to every item indiscriminately. If you kill this bug right here, he will drop two variants of rosary beads, one made from shell and one made from various other materials. The larger rosary beads made from shell will sink like the shell shards, while the basic rosary beads will float because they are not as dense. And this is pretty much all the mechanics that are unique to the sea in Silksong right now, because there's basically no water in this game. Team Cherry made a very active choice to pretty much avoid all water and swimming based interactions beyond the most basic movement of just floating around and dashing. Incredible stuff. So it makes me very interested in what Sea of Sorrow will look like. And to look to the future, let's see what's in the game right now. Using the power of mods, we can spawn things into areas with water where they wouldn't normally be able to interact with water, and see how the mechanics that Team Cherry has put in the game work, even when they weren't intended to be explored before the DLC. For example, you spawn lava into the game, it won't create the same steam with water, but will instead create many splashing hitboxes as if the water is being attacked multiple times. Now, you can easily say, Kilroy, none of these mechanics are going to be relevant at all for Sea of Sorrow, and to that I say, we have animations and other mechanics in this game that are very clearly related to this DLC in some way, that were put in at the start of this game, almost a full year ago now. And more than that, we have a lot of mechanics that are barely explored now, which may be relevant later. For instance, we pretty much only have the flint slate to bring fire to water normally, and the lava didn't react the same way, but these wisps do. So Team Cherry made a deliberate decision to make it so that these wisps can get dissipated by the water, even though other fiery elements in this game, like lava, won't. I find that interesting, and I see the potential with fire-based enemies in a DLC called Sea of Sorrow. And we only pretty much have one source of electricity right now with water. What will that look like if we're fighting in rooms full of water in Sea of Sorrow, or if we're under the water? Now listen, a lot of this is speculation, because we are all drowning for any information on Sea of Sorrow, but as things stand right now, I just thought this would be a fun thing to explore. I've got the mods to tell you all about every sea-related mechanic in this game before Sea of Sorrow. And if all those mechanics are irrelevant in Sea of Sorrow, then at least you can use this as a snippet of the past. And if they're all the same, then I predicted everything beforehand. I showed you all how the normal and shell rosary beads interact with water, in addition to shell shards. But what I didn't show you is how pearl rosary beads interact with water, and they do have a special interaction, which I guess we're not going to see. Because it turns out, when enemies die to water in this game, they don't drop any of the items they're supposed to. The water robs us of all of our wealth. So if I actually do want to test what'll happen when the largest rosary beads get put into water, I have to hit them in manually. And forgetting just water physics, all the rosary beads have different physics. The smallest ones move the fastest because they're probably the lightest. The shell rosary beads still can be hit pretty far, but the pearls, they are very solid and stuck onto the ground. Now this would imply that they would sink, much like the shell rosary beads, but that's not necessarily how density works. So I will be taking the very quick path of knocking this one rosary bead in there manually. Yes, and after a very boring few minutes later, in which time the shell rosary beads sunk, the normal rosary beads stayed floating, and guess what? So does the pearl rosary bead. Yeah, despite being the heaviest by far, it has the density to float. The only rosary bead that will ever sink into the sea is the shell rosary bead. So that doesn't mean much other than shells are the densest subject used to make beads. It's just an interesting fun fact that Team Cherry put in the game. But what about other items? Pretty much every item that's not a shell shard or a rosary bead in this game will show up in the form of these glowing balls of light. And how will these interact with the water? Well, when they fall in, they float like everything else, and these balls don't sink. But unfortunately, some of these items need to be interacted with to pick up, and if it's that type of item, I don't think it's possible to pick them up once they go into the water. So, Team Cherry, please make sure that if you're spawning any items in Sea of Sorrow, and there happens to be a body of water nearby, that they don't go in there, because then it's just going to be permanently inaccessible to us. Not that I need to tell you, you're the creators of this game. So, I wonder if you guys are all observant enough to figure out what I'm testing in this part of the video. If you are, then you will be able to see that bosses really can't survive the water very well. And not just bosses, earlier on in this video, you saw the Grand Reed fall apart the second it touched the surface of the water. And unfortunately, every single boss that I spawned in this section of the video just instantly blew up. It's crazy how deadly the water in Pharloom is, but it's not deadly to every single boss in the game. For example, Phantom here is baller enough that they don't die the second they touch the surface of the water. No, they die seconds after they touch the surface of the water because they fell out of bounds. But hey, they didn't die to water, and that makes them better than all the bosses I just showed. And I'm not going to showcase literally every single enemy's interaction with the water. For that, you'll have to go watch a beautiful video by Skill Issue, a YouTuber who does tests like these and who does great content on Silksong and on The Binding of Isaac, if you couldn't tell by their profile pic of a beautiful item. But yeah, as things stand, if Team Cherry really is going to make a sea-based DLC, they probably need to make more bosses that are able to survive it. Because what bosses do we have now? We have Groll the Great as a sea-based boss. Team Cherry, please do better than Groll the Great. Moving on from enemies, I wanted to talk about the very, very few platforms that can actually be moved in water in this game. And I forgot about this area near the Festival of the Flea, but this is probably the most clear and beautiful sea Silksong has, which is sad because it's not really a sea. But the platforming that all water has in this game comes down to this. You have the ability to move very few platforms around with your face. These and the leaves in Verdenia. This is pretty much it. Other than this, all other platforms you stand on are above the water and have nothing to do with the water. Incredible stuff. So, why don't I test out how platforms would look like if they're placed in the water with some mods. So yeah, what if we use some of the platforms that are already in the game? Like these magnetite platforms that crumble when you step on them. Well, you can put them into the water, and you could try and stand on them and see if Hornet will start swimming. They are inconsistent though. At this point here, I am being stopped by an underwater magnetite platform until I jump, at which point I can just walk over it. I feel like the levels of depth change whether or not you can stand on the platforms or you just continue to swim. But we have a lot more interesting things to go over than just these basic platforms. Silksong has a ton of objects that let you do intricate platforming with specific abilities, like the claw line and your pogo. And the pogo is very interesting when interacting with water, because as you can see, if you pogo at just the right time, you can simultaneously be in your swimming animation and moving upwards from your bouncing. And it seems very finicky, because if you do it at this level with this object on the right, it never happens. But if you do it with a slightly lower object, then you will be swimming and jumping at the same time. It doesn't really mean anything for mechanics other than it's funny, and I guess we're not going to be pogoing off of things too close to the water. We also have these claw line objects that let you stay in one place. And what happens if we try to use the claw line on these hoops when they're right next to the water? Well, they steal our needle. Yeah, because we've interrupted the animation, essentially, we've got a brand new needle duplication glitch. Hornet, it is time for you to dual wield. By using this claw line on these hoops in the water, you will be able to duplicate your needle and have them stuck in there. Because I guess just by canceling that animation with the water or with like an enemy or something, it just stores your state from when you were staying in place there. Incredible. Not useful at all. but clear that this kind of platforming is not intended by the game. Let's do some more platforming that's not intended by the game. These wheels, they never get close enough to actual water in the game, but we can do them here with the power of mods and see that they work perfectly fine. They drop you off and they don't steal your needle, which is very nice. I feel like what we've learned in this video so far is that the water will steal things from you without mercy, and we should probably try and avoid that as much as possible. So yeah, platforms basically are just glitchy messes when interacting with any water source in this game. So we're probably going to need a total overhaul of how platforming works, or just new objects, if we want any kind of underwater platforming or close to water platforming to happen in Sea of Sorrow. Now that we're done with basic platforms, let's go into the heavy hitters, all of the hazards and obstacles in this game, most of which don't care about water at all. In fact, for pretty much every single object in this game that's not an enemy or a tiny interactable like a shell shard, they just don't accept water as existing at all. They will just fall right through it. They might make a splash, or they might have no effect at all, like these spikes. They'll just pretend there's a void beneath them, and if it's an item that falls, it will... I did not know those spikes work like that. If it's an item that falls, it will just fall to the bottom of the map and despawn. Yeah, most things in this game are not programmed to work well with water, which might explain why this DLC is taking a while. Also, you need to disappear. You are very annoying sounding. Thank you. And while the obstacles aren't that interesting, something I did find out, which is kind of cool, is beds and benches. You can't normally sit on them without any foreground, and that includes water. But if you have a platform that disappears, you can just sleep on top of your bed boat or your bench boat. Pretty neat. This video is very important, I promise you everyone. This is knowledge that needed to be shared with the world. And I have some incredible knowledge about all of the NPCs in this game coming up. Because you see, most of your friends in Pharloom deal perfectly well with the sea. They can be placed in the water and have, I was gonna say they'd be fine, but Garmond and Second Sentinel are supposed to be in this area here. I don't know what happened to them. You can see when I open up the mob menu that they spawn here, and when I close it, I guess... Oh. Guys, I guess Garmond and Second Sentinel don't know how to swim. I mean, fair enough for Second Sentinel, they're a robot, but Garmond, you and Zaza should learn this skill, it's very important. I think that happened because they're in combat mode, but Chakra's also in combat mode, and she's doing fine, so I don't know. But regardless, one of the more interesting things about NPCs in water is that they will react when you attack them as normal, but they also react when you just land in the water. Their reactions when you land in the water are equivalent to when you attack the ground or taunt them. So it appears that landing in water is basically an attack in this game's mind, which is very interesting. But beyond that, all I really care about is that everyone is fine and happy, especially you, Pilby. You are a precious being, and for all the dangers of the sea that we've seen today, it seems like it doesn't affect you. I guess you can't ever trust the sea. And at this point, I think I've covered pretty much all the major mechanics. I don't expect that there would be any difference between picking up an object like this and picking up a rosary bead or a separate item, which we've already covered. Because these objects don't have any gravity, they just float in place, so they have no interactions with the water's physics at all. And when you pick them up, it's pretty much just like it... Now wait a minute. It is not like it normally works. It in fact kicks you out of the map entirely. Okay, well, I was wrong. We do have another sea mechanic to point out. Team Jerry, if you had any upgrades that play an animation in Sea of Sorrow, make sure they are far away from any water at all, because otherwise they're just going to kick you out of bounds. Or better yet, put them right next to the water. I love out of bounds in this video game. In fact, everything that doesn't work correctly in this video, please just don't fix it by the time Sea of Sorrow comes out. I would love to see it. And these platforms that you can pogo off of, they pretty much have the same interactions as the ones we showed before, even though they can move around. If you get them in just the right spot, you can swim and pogo at the same time. Incredible stuff. The most important mechanic I've ever talked about has to do with these pearls, because I love juggling them. And what happens if you juggle these pearls into the water? they actually have physics for it, which is nice. They splash and then they fall. It's much better than most objects are in this game, to be honest, and it's incredible that they've even made code for this. But hey, Team Cherry's ways are an enigma, for sure, my dear viewers. And at this point, I hope you all enjoyed this deep dive into water mechanics, sea mechanics, in our lead up to Sea of Sorrow. I would genuinely like to see if anything that I have explored today becomes relevant in Sea of Sorrow. The problem with Sea of Sorrow is just that we literally don't know if the sea is even water. Maybe it's a sea of sand. Maybe there's just no new water mechanics at all, and there's just a couple of rooms with more water in that DLC. But regardless of what happens in the future, I hope you've all enjoyed seeing the nonsense that I can get up to with mods and with experimenting with this game's mechanics. I hope you all have a great rest of your day as I fall into the void. Have a good day, everyone.